From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our panel, our moderator, John Kempf, Joel Salatin, Gary Zimmer, and Gabe Brown.
All right, welcome everyone. Have you ever in your life had the feeling that you had a hold of a tiger by the tail? That's what it feels a little bit like to moderate this panel this afternoon. So I've been looking forward to this conversation. Before we dive into this, I have a question for you out of personal curiosity. How many of you are attending an Acres conference for the first time? Wow. Well, a round of applause for all of you first-time attendees. Thank you. Yeah, that's impressive. I hope you found it as enjoyable as I have. So, we haven't published any specific, we haven't given an extensive description to this panel. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about when we have the opportunity to have these three pioneers and leaders in this space who've been around for decades, how do we approach this conversation to produce the most value and to have the best conversation possible that we can all learn from? And we live in a time where we have so much political discord, and the political discord in society at large has even entered into this room, where we have people in the organic agriculture, regenerative agriculture, ecological agriculture space who we've almost adopted this perspective of desiring to figure out how we are different from the other people. Instead of figuring out how we are aligned and how we are unified, we focus on how we are different. And we have all of these divisive conversations about this approach and this method is better than that approach. And there is this perspective that we all have our opinions that are shaped and formed by our experiences. And I think it's wise for us to have strong opinions, but loosely held. Be open to changing our opinions, be open to changing our perspectives. And so within that context, thinking about how we can build a unification and build alliances and learn how to respect each other's differences of opinion, I'd like to kick things off with a question for each of you panelists is, what is a belief or a perspective that you've held for a long time? You have a lifetime of experience. What is a perspective that you've held for a long time that you've recently changed your mind about?
That's no fair. Gabe gets to do the end. So I actually wrote a couple things down when I found out that this was going to be a question. So a couple things. One is that there is no recipe. So what I mean by that is, I'm sitting here looking at soil profiles, 30 inches deep, subsoilers. On our farm, if you run a subsoiler, you're going to be into solid rock. Most of our places, we only have 12 inches of soil, and then you're on solid rock. It was all washed away during tillage, during the 1800s. And so the fact is that you have to understand that all of us are starting from a different place. I mean, we were in our area, we were plowing and planting barley and wheat, eroding the soil off 100 years before Europeans even came to Gabe's place. So we've got 100 years of devastating exploitation, additional, and down south, you don't have a winter, and so stuff grows, more year round. And you don't have the thing. So the handicap from where you start from necessitates a different recipe for And so I know what's worked for me, but it won't necessarily be the best for you. I would say the only other thing, two other things quickly for me. One is we tried line breeding for a while, and we found out that we're not set up for line breeding because I don't like to stay up to 2 o'clock in the morning looking at genetic family trees. It's just not my thing.
That's not the only time of day you could look at them,
I know it's not, but people that do breeding, genetic, stockmanship selection, that's what they like to do. At least that's what I've found, and I would rather not do it. And the final thing for me, one of the biggest ones, was July 4th, 2019, when we started shipping nationally, because I'd been a cultist on local food systems to where I wouldn't ship anything to anybody anywhere, and I realized we were becoming obsolete, and if we were going to stay viable, we had to join the 21st century and begin shipping.
Joel, I want to go back to your first point. You said you've changed, you answered the question in terms of you don't think there's a recipe, but my question was, what is a belief that you've held for a long time that you changed your opinion about? How did you change your opinion about the appropriateness of using a recipe? I'm not going to let you off the hook quite that easy,
Yeah, well, that was the weakest of the three. I'll just admit that. Well, for example, for us, because we didn't have soil, and our farm is long and skinny. I mean, I'm a fan of permaculture, but we found that we couldn't dig a swale because we didn't have any soil, so they were just digging up basketball-sized rocks, and so that became a non-option. And then, of course, you've got the idea of, I remember once early on trying to follow a light tillage cover crop, plant a to increase fertility, and again, there was no soil. There was just rocks. And so what we ended up doing was we just got into this carbon thing, bought a chipper, and we had a lot of woods. We had 4 times as many woods as we did open land. We only had 90 acres open and 450 acres of woodland. And so we began chipping to get carbon on the ground to begin building soil to hold the water back so we wouldn't get surface runoff. Each little chip is a little dam, and it creates a little tiny terrace, that's the size of a half a teaspoon, okay? But, those things gradually started building the soil to where, we had so little soil early on in the 60s. Dad poured concrete and used car tires, and we'd stack them on the tractor platform, and my brother and I were little kids, and we could heave them off along the field as he drove. He'd stick electric fence stakes in the half-inch pipe he put in the concrete tires, like volleyball stanchions, to hold up the electric fence stakes, because we didn't have enough soil to hold up electric fence stakes. So we needed carbon, and so we used the forest as a biomass factory, essentially, to feed the open land and start building soil. Today, those areas that were half the size of this room, that were, I remember as a kid, being nothing but solid rock. Not grass, not weed, not nothing. Solid rock today has 14 inches of soil on it. And that's happened in my lifetime just by creating a carbon economy.
Okay. Well, I don't think you've changed any opinions on that recently. So,
no.
Considering that you
change in my opinion,
considering that you are a self-described debater who happens to be a farmer, as your father called you, I think I win on that one. But this isn't a debate.
Well, no. The difference is that I now. So that's my story, okay. Well, then I read Dirt to Soil, or I see what Gary's doing in different parts of the world, Iowa, Dakotas, and there are other recipes.
Yeah.
So my story, my experience is this, or Mark Shepard, with, that's my story, but I'm very much appreciative. Other people in different climates, different soils, different contexts can have a different recipe to get to the same place.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Joel. Yeah. All right, Gary, over to you. What have you changed your mind about?
He's a hard master, boy, I'll tell you.
Well, first we can say it isn't who's right, it's what's right. I've been attending this for 40 years, and I've been speaking at it for 30 years. So some of you I know weren't born yet. And so originally I saw things come and go, magic little wands. In the beginning, when I went to Kansas City, it was radionics and towers of power and booms and sounds. My cousin was a veterinarian. He went with me, and he said, wow, there's radionics, little boxes and all that. Well, you see, I'm not saying there wasn't some merit to that, but you see, that was a piece of somebody's puzzle. And then a lot of things have really come and gone. And so this got started with Albrecht and soil balance. I'm a dairy nutrition guy that went after creating super feed for dairy cows. And there's a lot of ways to probably achieve that, but there's a lot of base ground. So that I was always a mineral balancer. And I don't think we can lose sight of the fact that there's minerals, there's biology, and there's physical properties involved. And so in the beginning, for me, it was just minerals. And I started my company, called it Midwestern BioAg, because I wanted people to focus on biology. But we didn't really know and understand that. Some of the changes that took place for me, you realize the words I did my topic yesterday on soil health and soil fertility. They've been in the vocabulary for 100 years. I finally have started to really grasp what they mean and what I have to do to attack them. And just like I get disturbed by certain bothersome things like, I got to be no-till to be successful. I said, if that's true, then you haven't lived long enough or traveled far enough. My book's got me all over this planet, and there's all kinds of ways to do things, and I'm not saying they have to farm with what they have, and I agree very much so with you saying that, because I get all over and I see all kinds of things, and I think the other thing is what I'd like to get accomplished on a farm isn't economically feasible for everybody. And so as time went on, so the things I now see, the big picture, it took me a long time. I just had pieces and parts and puzzles and finally putting it together. And that's why I say now in my lifetime, we got it all figured out. Well, everybody doesn't agree with that. And what do we have figured out is we understand the minerals, the biology, and the physical properties. Now, so I was never a big person on doing a lot of foliars and sprays and plant manipulation. And I know John says that you can create healthy soils by getting healthy plants. And I see you create healthy plants by having healthy soils. And yet we're both trying to get to the same spot, aren't we? And it might be a little bit different way of approaching that. And so now I've actually, in the last several years, I realized that everybody, how many in here are willing to spend $1,000 an acre to correct a piece of land before you start farming it? That's after you rented it. Well, that's us. Because we now know where we're going and we know where we're trying to get. So we spend, in transition to organic, in those 2 years, we do everything we can to get those soils healthy and mineralized. But we also now have dabbed around with biologicals, and we work with a product that's a gelling agent to hold nutrients. So we realize that minerals ought to be in the carbon biological, but everybody can't start there. Everybody can't have we've been at it for 40 years. You see, we're in a different mentality and a mindset, but don't lose sight of the fact that like I said, right now, the focus on your farm ought to not be whether I till or don't till, whether I have livestock or don't have livestock. Your focus ought to be, I want healthy, mineralized soils, and I want to have high soil fertility. If you don't understand what they mean, and they've been in my vocabulary a long time, I now have finally, you're here not to get necessarily a new piece of information, but strengthen some of the things that you probably just overlooked. Like, what is soil health and what is soil fertility? How do I achieve those on my farm? And so I think that's some of the newer stuff to me. So I never quit learning, but a lot of it's my experiences and working with a lot of you folks and traveling the countryside that have really strengthened my beliefs and understandings about, and I've stood toe to toe with a lot of people in my lifetime, and I've learned to kind of accept what they believe and where they believe, and I've been very controversial about some things about here, and people really know that. So I've been blessed, and
You being controversial?
I don't know, have I? Well, I am a stubborn old German. You got to get that in place. So anyway, I think it's a clarification what you're really coming here for. You got some wild ideas, and like I said, don't get hung up on what's right and what's not right. It's how to make the system work on your farm, and that's exactly what we just heard here. So, thank you, Gary.
To me, something that I've changed my mind on. Well, gee, John, for a long time I thought you were kind of stuck up, but I've learned otherwise. I'm just kidding. John and I have always gotten along real well. Gary and I, maybe not so much. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You got to lighten this up. So what I've changed my mind on since, the 40 years I've been going down this path, it seems 30 plus years anyway. I used to be, I'm always kind of outspoken, but I used to not spend much time with the business corporate side of things, trying to change their minds. And now I've really found over the past several years that we need everybody to come together and find common ground for common good. So now I spend the majority of my time talking to CEOs, board of directors, heads of sustainability. And why I do that is to tell them the story that the farmer and rancher is the most important thing to their business, and why that is, why they should care about their supply chain instead of just trying to source the cheapest product possible. So that's something that I've changed my mind on lately.
And yeah, but following up on that, Gabe, tell us a little bit about the results. This is an audience that few of us speak to on a regular basis. So as you've changed your mind and as you've been engaging in that conversation, what have you observed? What are some of the highlights?
Yeah, well, the highlight of that is you can find a particular business that's sourcing a particular crop or protein, et cetera, and then you can talk with them that it's okay. Let's go in and focus on helping the farmers, ranchers, whatever the case may be, move down the regenerative path in that supply chain. So I can go to a particular farm, and I do, and work with one individual. But if we're working with an entire supply chain, all the farmers, ranchers, et cetera, in that supply chain, we're going to really make greater change, which will be good not only for profitability of that individual farmer or rancher, but also for the ecosystem and the public and the watersheds. And, it has positive compounding effects.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Gabe. Thank you for your work in that space, because it's something that we need a lot more of. One of my favorite quotes is from Charlie Munger, who passed away recently, was Warren Buffett's business partner. And he had this saying, he said, "You have no business having an opinion until you can articulate the opposing point of view better than the people who hold the opposing point of view." And I think if we exercise that better or more, we would have much fewer strongly held opinions. And what is an opinion or perspective that you have that is perhaps different from a lot of people in this space, certainly different from the agricultural space in general, but even different from people that might be in this room, and why might they have a different point of view?
Start with me again?
Yeah, you're on the hot seat once more, Joel.
Man, I'll tell you, I got on the hot seat on this one, I'll tell you. So for me, I think it is that I assume good intent from everybody. Intention is a very subjective thing. Intention. What's your intention? And I find that many of us, we get frustrated, angry about Bill Gates, World Economic Forum, BlackRock. You can name your, whatever, Nestle's, Tyson, JBS, Cargill, you can name your Monsanto, all right? GMOs, Roundup. Okay, these are not our friends, okay? But I believe that maybe not all of them, but the vast majority, 95% or more, are well-intended. The people of Monsanto are not trying to create autism and kill your child. They actually believe that they are feeding the world, making affordable food so we can go on a Caribbean cruise if we want to, and have time to play soccer because everybody doesn't have to farm anymore, and there's enough time to have a soccer team. Okay? And I find that for me, in my discussions with those kinds of people, it helps a lot if I enter the discussion that we disagree, but I completely honor and respect that their intention is sincere and they mean well. They're not trying to hurt me. Even my worst enemies, they're not actually trying to hurt me. We just have very different opinions of how to do good. And I'm not saying there's evil, all right? I'm not saying there's not evil. No, there absolutely is evil, okay? But I mentioned names like I did, like Bill Gates, Maybe he's evil, maybe he's not, but I think there's a lot better chance of having a discussion with him if I assume he means well, we just really disagree on how to get there, than if I assume he's the devil incarnate. And where do you go as soon as you bag somebody with intention, where do you go with a discussion? If you think my intention is evil, well, we have nothing to talk about. But if we mutually agree that our intent is well-meaning and good, then we can talk about how to get there.
Very well said.
Yeah. Well, John's looking at me, so this thing about opinions and about stances, I was trained by some really good people. I had some really good mentors in my life, and I was a Brookside consultant, and Dr. Weber was from Indiana, and Al Weber, and he was a trainer of mine, and we were out somewhere, and I was stating an opinion, and he said, stop. He said, you have no right to have that opinion, because once you have an opinion, you're going to defend it for the rest of your life, even though it's wrong. Live your life under the opinion. I'm under the opinion today with this advice and this information that what I'm seeing, this is the way it is. If you're under the opinion, it's easier to change your opinion when you run across new kind of stuff. Now, I'm under the opinion that you're not going to have a healthy soil without mineralization. Now, my controversy is out here that I'm not opposed to regenerative ag, and I tell the people out here that I say, if you want to just fix land with livestock, I got some land you need to start on. Phosphorus levels under single digit, the pH is 5.5, and the potassium is non-existent. And I said, so I would like to see how you're going to do that. Nothing grows there now. So out of my controversy, conflicts that people have with me is the fact that I will also force the fact that you got a job to do. You got chemical, physical, and biological to deal with. And we all know we can't constantly till all the time. But then there's, again, I said, just like this whole battle out here, that mostly in your mind you have the opinion that phosphorus is a bad guy. If you want to drive yields, you better drive phosphorus uptake. Phosphorus uptake comes from soil fertility, not applied phosphorus. And so whether you get in micro-ride, wherever you get to do that. So I think if you look at, the stances I've taken out here, and then I've been criticized for a few of them, understandably so, but I've followed a lot of farms, a lot of situations, and that's why I said, if you're under the opinion that you need to get rid of tillage, you better learn how to get healthy mineralized soils first. You're going to have to earn the right for every change you make in a positive direction. You just don't jump off the cliff and hope you can fly. And so that's kind of my controversies are usually fighting the system that I spent my whole career learning from some really good people, and that is that there are chemical, physical, and biological properties of the soil, and you got to work with all of them. And there is no one exact way to do that.
And so I remember vividly, thanks, Garrett. I remember vividly in 2009, I was harvesting corn late one evening, and my son was away at the university, and I was talking to him on the phone as I was combining. I was combining that corn, and I was kind of complaining to him that the yield wasn't what I thought it should be. And he said, "Dad, you're trying to outproduce our environment." And that was just like a brick hit me. And I just thought about that, how so often we're solely focused on yield. And that really shifted to my mind to one that I think there's many places we're trying to outproduce our environment. We're able to do that, but at great cost to not only an expense, but ecologically, to the environment, to the resource. And from that day on, I never, ever focus on yield. I focus on profitability. And we've been profitable on ever since. Even in the years 2020, 21, 22 were the 3 driest years in recorded history there in Bismarck, and we harvested a crop all 3 years, and a profitable crop where the neighbors only harvested 1 out of the 3. And it's because wherever you're at, you have to farm a ranch in your context, like Joel said. We each have so much sunlight, so much moisture, and I really believe for the good of society that we need to concentrate more on working within the constraints of our environment and not trying to force our will on nature.
It's very well said. Thank you, Gabe.
Said.
Hey there. Did you attend our EcoAg conference this year in Madison, Wisconsin? Well, if you didn't, or if you did, we've got the recordings now available. Get on-demand access to every session with the EcoAg recordings. Learn directly from the pioneers of soil health, livestock integration, and profitable regenerative systems, all at your own pace. Speakers include Gabe Brown, Alan Williams, John Kempf, Joel Salatin, and a lot more. We also have additional products that include the full-day workshops done by Matt Powers, John Kempf, Nigel Palmer, Jordan Green, Mark Shepard, and Austin Unruh. These workshops are in depth and will help you dig deep on the presenters' topics. Grab your recordings now at conference.eco-ag.com/24 recordings or find the link in the notes. Because the best investment you can make is in your own knowledge. Now back to the show.
Gary, I'm going to, coming back to you, you were under the opinion that we need to address soil mineralization and mineral balance. Why is it, the second part of the question that I asked at the beginning is, why might others have a different point of view? Why might others disagree with you?
Well, I think why do they disagree with that fact? And I think the fact is that I can still produce a crop. I can manipulate the plant and I can do some of those things. You got to realize where my focus is going. And maybe we don't have your shallow soil, but we have some pretty marginal land. We farm just 40 miles west of here. And it's eroded away also. You know, it's limestone rock soils out there. And so our whole focus on our farm is the fact that we're extremely low input. I might have started Midwestern BioAg and we sell a lot of fertilizers. We don't use very many anymore. So my whole goal and objective is not yours. My son farms alone on 1,500 acres in a 45-mile circle. He's all certified organic. He's not going to haul spray tanks around. He's not going to go out and foliar feed. He can't get the work done. He's not very good with people, and so he'd rather be alone, and he'd rather work all night than with the headlights knocked out of his tractor. No, it's a side story here. And so I think the fact that I can do it, there's a lot of ways I can do it. If I don't fix the soil, I'm constantly going to be spoon-fed. If I eat junk food, I'm constantly need to take a handful of pills, whether they're drugs from the doctor or some other pills to stay functional. I also have another choice, and that choice is if I can get the foods into me right and get the high nutritional, high quality foods with all kinds of things that my body's got to fight against, that I don't really need those things anymore. And I think that's the way the soil in my mind, that's why I'd like to get most everybody I work with. That's not feasible for everybody's types of soil. And so I think the fight I have, because I know in my years of doing this, I'm under the opinion that in all the years I've been doing this thing out here, that most soils can be dramatically improved. Now, 20 years ago in this country, there was nobody flying on a fungicide on corn. 3 times a year, my neighbors are flying on fungicides, and their fields are wiped out with tar spot. We can't even find it on our fields, and we're across the fence. Maybe we got good fences. I don't know. whatever it might be. So I think what gets me, all the years and things I followed is if you get the base right, the objective to that is that I shouldn't have to tap into all the other stuff. Now, I realize that you can take things a long ways, and I think you're absolutely, I'm on your page. We're in the only industry where yield, you go to a farmer and say, I'm getting 100 pounds of milk a cow a day. Oh, I had 250 bushel corn. I had 300 bushel corn. They're all yield and volume driven, and yet they drive the price down by doing that. And so I'm one of those guys that say, yeah, I want to get it profitable, but I want to get my soil fixed. I think everybody wants to get where my son is in farming. And we buy sulfur and boron, and we got a really unique closed system. We don't import much. We don't bring much onto the farm, but we don't export much. We only bring off grain, and we do huge amounts of cover crops. And people cannot come to my farm. I had a guy at the Dairy Expo from Australia, and he could not stand being on my farm and seeing these beautiful cover crops that I wasn't going to harvest and haul away. He couldn't grasp the fact that I was going to put them back in the ground. He said, "Are you going to graze these things?" I said, "We don't have any fences. We don't have any livestock." And he just couldn't get over that thing. And so I tried to explain to him there, but he had his little marks in that thing. So I'm doing it because I think everybody should do that first. Everybody should eat really good first. And if you need a pill or a drug or a supplement, then go for it. But get your base right first. And that food and soil are those bases.
So, not to start an argument here, but the first testing we had done at our farm in the early 60s was by Brookside Lab, recommended, mineralization. And so we had a friend that was an early disciple, and we shared a train car load of soft rock phosphate with him. So he could get it cheaper. We got a couple truckloads, and he used 3 or 4 truckloads on his place. And we didn't see any benefit whatsoever, nothing. Phil Callahan came along, paramagnetic rock. Remember Phil Callahan, paramagnetic rock. We got a super sack of paramagnetic rock. Spread that. Never saw anything. I won't bore you with all the addition, but here's the thing that I'm not trying to debate Gary here, far be it from that. But what I'm saying is, our biology, I don't think, was enough to metabolize the minerals that we were buying and putting on.
That's correct.
And I can remember well, Gabe had a wonderful story with his son. My epiphany, I remember like yesterday. I don't know how old I might have been 20, 21. I was young, and I was walking through the field one day, and of course, we were avid Acres U.S.A. fans, readers. We'd gotten Weeds, Guardians of the Soil, Weeds, What They Tell, Charlie Walters and C.J. Finzow, all that. All right, and so, and at that time, broom sedge. We had broom sedge. I mean, you thought we were growing it for a crop. Nothing but broom sedge. And I look in the book, and broom sedge is low calcium. Low calcium, other things, but primarily poverty soil, low calcium. I'm walking through the field one day, and here is a red clover coming right up through the middle of a broom sedge. It wasn't robust, it was spindly, but there was a nice, beautiful pink blossom on red clover. And I just remember staring at that thing. I went back, looked at the weed book. Red clover requires very high calcium, indicative of highly fertile soils. When I say it was growing up through, you know how a broom sedge is. This is a clump type grass. It was literally in the middle of this clump grass. What do you make of this? And I think what I was seeing, and what is turned now we don't have any broom sedge at all. You can't find a single plant on the place. Lots of red clover. We never planted a seed. We never applied any mineral. We didn't do anything except composting, but we had 450 acres of woods that were weedy. They had a lot of junky, crooked trees. And so for us, the efficacious thing was to work on the biology, feed carbon, The carbon then made carbonic acid as it decomposed. The carbonic acid, remember I talked about our rocks? Our rocks were really close to the surface. I mean, a lot of places we can't put fence posts in, okay? And so that biological cycle being fed carbon accessed the mineral. And so I've got to finish it with this. Since I went this far, buried myself this far, I got to finish it with this. So we had a friend about 4 years ago, bought a property near us, and he wanted to do soil testing and get a benchmark. And so he's going to send them to Neil Kinsey. We all love Neil Kinsey. This is not a diss or anything. And I recommended him. I said, send us to Neil Kinsey if you want a mineral analysis. Okay. So he said, just so I know what I'm doing here, just to have a comparison, got to take some soil samples from your place and send them in to Neil. He won't label it. It'll just be A, B, C, D. He didn't say it was coming from our place. And I said, well, sure, take whatever samples you want. So he took several samples. He sent them all in, A, B, C, D, E, F. All the ones from ours came back completely saturated, no mineral needed. From Neil Kinsey, who almost always recommends a mineral. We've never applied a bag of mineral. We've never applied anything from off the farm, but we have really gotten onto the carbon economy. And whether it's cover crops, wood chips, the carbon economy, for us, that has worked beautifully.
There's a lot of ways to mineralize soils.
Yeah, that's right.
You got these fresh green clippings in this compost. You got all those chickens that you buy grain for every day, either your farm imports or exports. Years ago, Louis Bromfield said, we're only going to sell things off our farm that can walk. We're not going to sell hay. We're not going to sell crops out here. So there's lots of ways to remineralize that. That load of rock phosphate finally showed up after you started getting biology to go. And that's why it's a chemical, physical, and biological cycle. Without the base rock to pull from, without all the carbon that has minerals in it, or I know Greg, Judy, and something, I use hay. I got neighbors they milk a lot of cows. They refuse to buy fertilizer, and they're friends of mine, but they bought 600 tons of hay their first year of farming. I'm sorry, there's minerals in that hay. And their salt hills are like yours. No, they're off the charts. They're absolutely wonderful, but they buy grain for their cows and they buy hay. Well, of course, they didn't have to buy a bag of minerals. And so there's all kinds of ways you got to remineralize by extracting some of the stuff that was there because there was a base and because you have the imported minerals from your green clippings and from your grain you fed your chickens.
Gabe, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, it occurred to me while these guys are talking that tomorrow when I get home, I'm going to go by the cemetery and I'm going to say a prayer thanking my ancestors that they passed by Virginia and Wisconsin and Iowa, went to North Dakota.
I thought they passed by.
I thought they think they deserve a thanks.
I thought they passed by because they couldn't afford to buy our good land and they went where it was so bloody cheap.
Yeah. That may be, but my neighbor just sold 3/4 for $17,850 an acre. So land isn't so cheap.
Good thing he doesn't have to make his living farming.
Needless to say, I was not contending bidder.
That was cropland. Cropland?
Yeah, it was cropland.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a wonderful conversation. Thank you both for contributing. Any comments that I might have had are now obsolete after Gabe's comment. Yeah. So, continuing with the theme of perspectives and opinions, I'm of the persuasion that most of the things that prevent us from moving forward in life are our own self-limiting beliefs, our own self-limiting opinions and perspectives. Each of you have had extensive experience coaching and working with other people, offering advice to people, some who may have accepted it, others who may have not. What are some of the common or prevalent stumbling blocks or self-limiting beliefs or opinions that you've observed in people that have come to you for advice and perspective? Gabe, I'll go to you first this time.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed Joel wasn't picking up the mic very fast. We always say when we meet with clients, you have to take them where they're at. And each person has a different aversion to risk. And you have to take that into consideration. First of all, you have to listen and listen carefully, and then take them where they're at. And, we have clients that they'll try these principles, practices on one field. It has to be over the hill where none of the neighbors can see it. Then you got guys like me who will do it right along the interstate just to get people talking, but you have to take people where they're at. Also, they have to be ready. They have to have open ears a little bit, because often what we say, the greatest compaction on any farm or ranch is right up here, right between the ears. That we hear over and over, oh, that won't work here, that won't work here. So, okay, they're just not quite ready yet. But chances are you walk their fields with them and let them walk to where they want, and then take a shovel with always and show them what you're looking at. That opens their eyes, but you have to start within their aversion to risk. And then once they see an increase in profitability, an increase in soil function, and I like to call it soil function rather than soil health, because health can be good or bad, but that soil increase and improvement in that soil function, then they're going to move forward at their own aversion to risk.
Hey, eco-farmers. This is Taylor Henry with Acres U.S.A. I hope you enjoy this podcast as much as I enjoy interviewing these folks. If you're serious about regenerative agriculture, I've got an incredible resource you need to check out, the Acres U.S.A. membership. You farm in the physical world, and you deserve a physical printed magazine to match. Since 1971, Acres U.S.A. magazine has been the leading voice in ecological agriculture, delivering the best insights from regenerative farmers, agronomists, and researchers to help you farm profitably without toxic chemicals. Our membership included physical and digital copies of the magazine each month of the year, which has always been a standard for Acres U.S.A., but we wanted to over-deliver on content. When I acquired this business, I was happy to find that we had years of audio files from presentations at our annual EcoAg conference. And guess what? They were hiding. Well, not anymore. We developed this membership portal that gives you access to the recordings from farmers like Gabe Brown, Gary Zimmer, Joel Salatin, and Mark Shepard. We also include recordings of private events. Finally, if you are like me and you like listening to content, we are now producing a membership-only podcast of each issue of the magazine, so you can consume each article while you're out in the field. To make things even sweeter, you'll get discounts on books, workshops, and events to keep expanding your knowledge. So are you ready to take your farming to the next level? Join today for a ridiculously low price at eco-farming.com, or see details in the notes.
So, Gabe, if we can dig into that just a little bit deeper, you mentioned that your perspective, the greatest compaction on the farm is between the ears. I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. What, if you could quantify it, what exactly is the compaction? You mentioned aversion to risk. Are there other self-limiting beliefs in addition to that?
Yeah, one of them is peer pressure. Let me give you an example. I was speaking in northeastern Colorado at a workshop, and I had a young guy come up to me, and this was just a few years ago. And he said, Gabe, I hear you talk about diversity, but how do I get my father and grandfather to agree to add some diversity to our rotation? And I said, well, what's your rotation? And he said, well, great-grandpa bought the farm in 1914. We've never sown a crop other than wheat. That land had seen nothing but wheat for well over 100 years. I said, it can't be profitable. Oh, no, he said, we went to summer following every other year, and we all have off-farm jobs. Yeah. So that was the peer pressure from his ancestors. They believe it won't work, so they just don't try anything. Yeah.
A couple of things I had to add. This soil health. What's the definition of soil health? This human health, the capacity to function without intervention. So he said, I got healthy soils, but you're doing all these things. Just like I'm 80 years old. If I took a handful of pills every day, you couldn't call me healthy. And I always joke about it. I said, the best way not to take pills every day is never go to a doctor. See, then you don't have to take any. But, I look at that and I said, I agree with all that thing about the peer pressure. See, we are in a time that's so different. I tell people, years ago, we depend upon university research, which is fine. If you're in Wisconsin and you got black, rich prairie soils and a dairy farm on the end of it, on the end of your field, and their research fits you. What we got going today is We can test things on farms, whether it got a biologic, and you got to test them for several years. And we got global positioning. We can monitor what's going on with the crop. We got yield monitors. We got every farm ought to be its own research test. See, most people are not willing to look like an idiot, and that's why they do it over the hill. And you see, but now we can go out there and say, I'm testing out some new products. We have 250 on-farm trials going on this year, where the farmers can actually measure things on their own farm. Now, you got to realize they got yield monitors, but we got global positioning. There's ways to do that and replicate that and get an idea, does that really fit me? It sounded really good. See, people that sell it really believe in it because they saw it to work someplace. Most people are basically honest. I agree with you, but they might have got sidetracked somewhere along the line. But that doesn't, they don't understand that some of the guys that sell products, they probably would like to sell their same product to everybody. They aren't. I said, you better figure out where it fits and where it fails. I brewed up bugs last summer, and I put all kinds of, I foliar sprayed. I was hoping it would fail, and it did. And I was really excited. Now I don't have to do it again. You see, but so I think you got to find out what fits you. Why would that fit me when I'm putting out, why putting out a compost tea fit me when I'm putting out compost and doing all these cover crops? Are you sure that's what I need? There might be things I need, but I could probably test those, but it's not the desire of our farm. So I think the changes that we can see coming in agriculture right now, we're going to eventually figure out what fits where. What's the best move you can make? What's the best first move you can make? And let's do that to get enough profitability to move on.
I think people aren't hungry enough. They're not hungry enough, or too much safety nets. Got a safety net of, inherited land, government price supports, a crop insurance, off-farm job, spouse's off-farm job, and I'm very thankful that Teresa and I were living on $300 a month in an attic apartment, driving a $50 car with no TV, and I don't think we've still gone on a vacation in, 45 years. But we were hungry, and it was sink. You ever in a swimming pool? You ever played a jump or dive? You jump off and then somebody yells jump or dive. You either jump or dive. And it's even worse if it's sink or swim, And so for us, it was sink or, and I just think, and all the consulting I do, people I talk, I just think, in general, it's too easy. And so the easy thing, my first thought to the question was wealth. I was going to say wealth. And I find that at least people that I do any consulting for, or people that I meet, the people that aren't wealthy are the ones who take, I think, whatever we're saying up here and run with it faster than wealthy people. I'm just kind of done with wealthy people. I'm just.
Aren't you one of them?
No, I'm not. Most of our lives, we've lived under the poverty line. Teresa and I were talking the other day, we said, if we ever actually made money, got rich, I mean, we make good money, but if we really, for the proverbial ship comes in, and we wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
I have no desire to buy fancy clothes, go on, drive a fancy car. She says she'd like a red convertible Corvette. That's grandma coming out, But
I can see it already under the Christmas tree. It'll be a little matchbox.
Yeah, a little matchbox. That's right. But what I find is that the people that are up against the wall, really hungry, that's when they're ready. Almost nobody makes a change in comfort. They make a change in difficulty.
Yeah, exactly right. One of the benefits I had were those 3 years of hail and the year of drought. Banker wasn't going to loan me money, so it was either change or be off the farm. So that was one of the best things that could have happened to me. Not at the time, I didn't think. But in retrospect,
right? Tragedy and difficulty always germinate creativity, and so be thankful if you're here today. Just if you're here today and your back's against the wall, and man, I don't know where I don't know. Okay, your back's against the wall. Don't quit. Get creative. Get creative. Take what you've learned this week, spit out the chaff, take the good stuff, and the only difference between success and failure is not the difference between successful people and failure, people that fail, is not failure. It's quitting. Because successful people, only difference is the last time that they fell, they got back up.
Yeah. See, I think another dilemma, and you kind of brought it up, is the fact that I say farmers became slaves to agribusiness. And these big farms, if you're from a really large farm, I don't want to pick on them. I work with some of the largest farms on the planet. But if you're you don't have much of a say. I did a meeting on a 5,000 cow dairy farm, and a young kid just graduated from the university. He was so excited about getting into biological regenerative ag. And I turned to him and I just asked one question. Is anybody on this farm going to listen to you? And he just sat there. You see, how to get change is going to be really, really difficult. How family farms is really, you can make the decisions yourself. It's really hard on some of these big farms. And I always said, some things change one funeral at a time, but boy, oh boy, oh boy. So they get discouraged. They don't find any fun in farming. They don't find the challenge in it because they're a slave to agribusiness. They don't know how to get out of it, or they're a part of a big cog and they have no right to make a decision. So we lost way too many family farms, and I think if we're going to do anything with the government, now that you're going to be a government person, we're going to save family farms.
Could you feel that knife a little bit?
I'm going to add a thought to this conversation. Something that I've been really puzzled by. I grew up on a family farm, and my father was very innovative and open to change. We changed, of course, we're growing have a vegetable farm, and so we would change crops and we would change our setup
Like that.
from year to year in response to market demands as needed and as necessary. And in many cases, I've suggested to farmers that perhaps the piece that needs to change is what they're growing. And they get this puzzled expression on their face, like this is going to be so difficult. They have all this capital investment, they have all of these commitments made, and this familiarity with growing a certain thing. And the idea of growing something different seems to be this incredible task. And I've been thinking about why is that? And my perception is that their lives are so full, they are so busy without paying attention and prioritizing the things that actually bring value. On our fruit and vegetable operation, we, on several occasions, found that 80% of our profitability was coming from 20% of our crops. So we might as well have cut out everything else. And we did that on several occasions. We cut out the other crops we were doing. And all of a sudden, it was August and September. It was the middle of the summer growing season. And us boys had time to go fishing. We had time. We had time to be creative. We had time to be innovative because we cut out all of the energy that we were, in essence, wasting. And that's, I think, a challenge of many operations is people are so busy with busy work that they don't have the time to be creative. It feels like an impossible burden to consider doing something new.
Yeah, most breakthroughs are break-withs.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing because I've been in the fertilizer business all these years, and I think even Taylor brought it up. My company's reputation is that we're not stable because we're constantly changing. Well, if I find a better way to make a fertilizer, I'm going to change, but I don't have the same fertilizers I started with. It's like you said, that to make a change out here. So if I can come along with a better way of doing something, wouldn't it make sense to do it instead of saying, why even pay attention? I just let that idea fly because we constantly kind of make something a little bit better, but there's a lot of pressure not to change too.
Yep. So a different take on the last question that I asked the question of what are the common self-limiting beliefs that you encounter? And I'd like to ask the opposite of that. What are the characteristics that you encounter that are commonly present in people who go on to exceptional success, to be exceptional farm managers? You mentioned one aspect, Joel, of people not quitting and just being persistent. But what are some of the other characteristics that you see of people who go on to exceptional success. Yes, Gabe?
Yeah, lifelong learners, without a doubt. They have to be inquisitive and want to learn. You know, the more I know I don't know. And I just love regenerative ag because every day I'm learning something new, you know, and I see that in people who are successful. They're inquisitive and they want to be educated and continue to educate themselves.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. And I think the thing is that some people are in a spot they can't really do too much. But I think if they're inquisitive about knowledge, why did you come here? You spent money and you spent time and things to get here. And I think that's true. And there's nothing more powerful than a person who's been self-educated. And so that does give you the thrill and the excitement. And that's why I said if you live your life under your opinion, you're always gaining and learning more. And that is true. That's the reason we farm, is the fact that it's not a routine factory job. It's trying to, and we have a responsibility. I think I'm organic, and I complain about the organic industry. Most people are going into organic to make some money. I like the prices being low because that'll weed out the guys that went after money. And so if someone's willing to pay twice as much for what I produce, by gosh, I better produce something that they're happy to buy. Whether that be your grass-fed beef or whatever your chickens out or how you did it, doesn't matter whether you're organic or not. But if you're going to pay more, deliver that instead of just trying to take advantage of them. So the ones that are really into saying, I got a responsibility for what I do, whether with the land and animals and everything else, are the ones that really get into this game.
Thank you.
I would say, yeah, I don't know, have a lot to add. Just people that are willing to invest in curiosity. I just did a conference with a bunch of psychologists, and dealing with autism and COVID and all this stuff. And somebody asked him during Q&A, they said, what determines whether you will or will not proceed with a client? And he said, curiosity. He said, if a client's curious, and he was an unconventional practitioner, if a client's curious, I go on with them. But if they're not curious, if they're not interested in curiosity, said, last session, I don't see you again. You're on your own. And curiosity, I think, is a big deal.
Which is parallel to lifelong learner. Yeah, exactly. We've had a fairly wide-ranging conversation. What thoughts have come to your mind that we haven't yet touched on that you would like to express?
Well, I'm thinking I got to speak here in a few minutes.
You're incorrigible, Joel. All right, we're coming up on the clock. I want to say thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for this great conversation. Let's all give them a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. And we're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experiences.